it's the late 70s, and John, a stay-at-home dad, is doing what he loves, writing and recording demos of songs he's working on. He's in his late 30s, in good health, and has no inkling that in a few short years he will be dead. When he passes, his wife gives the demos to the guys that he used to play with. So some years later, they get together in a studio where they compose and record their own parts to add to their dead friend's voice. But unfortunately, John recorded his original vocals in his living room with a TV on in the background. So these former bandmates, Paul, George, and Ringo, are unable to isolate his vocals from the extraneous noise. Flash forward to Peter Jackson's documentary about the Beatles' last concert, Get Back, in which Jackson applies new audio software to the raw footage to isolate conversations from the cacophony of other sounds in the studio. Producers then apply this same technique to John's original demos to strip out a clean track of his voice. George has been dead for 20 years at this point, but Paul and Ringo are able to pull in the guitar parts that he had originally recorded back in 1995. Then they record their own new bass line and drum tracks. They add an arrangement of strings and release a new Beatles single, Now and Then, some 50 years after the band dissolved. It's a pretty good song, too. And what are the lyrics of this old new song recorded by the dead and the living alongside each other? The chorus, now and then I miss you. Oh, now and then I want you to be there for me. And the first and final verse, I know it's true, it's all because of you. And if I make it through, it's all because of you. To me, it's the perfect metaphor for this All Saints Sunday, when we celebrate those who went before us, calling them all saints, as we do in our tradition, imperfect and flawed as they were, saints for completing their course on earth as well as they could. They recorded their own rough melodies, each generation remixing and adding to it. The legacy they gave us is not perfect, but we work to strip away what is pure from what is broken and of its time in the tradition, the racial animosities, the misogyny, the distrust of sexual minorities, and xenophobia. We listen for the essential core of that song, and we bring that into the studio of our lives, where it's our turn to shape it for our own time, to give it a new heartbeat, to anchor it with a bass line, to coax it into fullness with strings. And thanks be to God, the dead are present with us in the song, this choir of witnesses surrounding us and filling our ears as we lift our own voices to join theirs. What they have done in their time is now our job in ours. In his book, The Beauty of What Remains, Rabbi Steve Leder shares one important thing he has learned from the deaths of his congregants and the stories that their families tell about them afterwards. These stories are almost never about professional achievements or awards. Mostly, what I have learned from listening to so many stories, he writes, is that life and love are essentially about time. Time spent consciously, deliberately, mundanely, lovingly together when you could otherwise have been apart. He writes his eulogies from the stories that these families tell, but he says, the profound and simple truth is that we are each writing our own eulogies every day with the pen of our lives. And he returns to this theme later in the book, concluding that, there's a third quote. Third quote, he concludes, we should live our lives as good ancestors to the people we love most and the ones they will love most, whom we will never know. In our tradition, we might put this same message a slightly different way. We should try to live as future saints. Not in the sense of special holy people, but in the ordinary sense, members of the faith, doing our best to stand up to evil, to spend our time meaningfully, to write our own eulogies with the pen of our lives, to sing the world God's love song passed on to us by our ancestors for our own time and place. And what a time and place it is. I think often these days of William Butler Yeats' poem, The Second Coming, which seems to anticipate the world we now inhabit from 100 years back. He writes, things fall apart, the center cannot hold. Mere anarchy is loosed upon the world. The blood-dimmed tide is loosed, and everywhere the ceremony of innocence is drowned. The best lack all conviction, while the worst are full of passionate intensity. That is the state of affairs, friends. There's no point in pretending otherwise. But it is not the song our saints have passed on to us. It is more like the noise of today's television in our living rooms, against which our voices must compete. Our song is the song of the great multitude and the angels and the elders falling before God's throne in today's reading from Revelation. It's a song of praise. It's also a song of gratitude, rising on the cloud of sound that the saints before us have laid down. And we sing it against everything that interrupts, everything that distracts, everything that threatens to silence us. It goes, Amen, blessing and glory and wisdom and thanksgiving and honor and power and might be to our God forever and ever.